Friendship! Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is my friend Brian.
This is my friend Liam, the guy who completed my Star Wars Steelbook collection.
And today we are going to be talking about just that. We are going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And Brian is going to be the guy to stay with me for the rest of this video series, because we're actually going to be talking about every single Star Wars film in order of the release dates. Brian, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So,
yes, that's actually one reason I wanted to invite you to this. You are like basically the one person I know that is like the biggest Star Wars fan like that I know about. And it's like, yeah,
well, I take that to heart.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in my life that we love Star Wars, but you're the only person that I know who has like everything from like collectibles, signed autographs, photos. I mean, you let me come to your house and you showed me your organized photos that are organized from the beasts of.
That was a good one. I think my favorite was I spent about a year piecing together the collection that I made the Carbonite scene from Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
It literally took me about a year, but I recreated the whole thing through your autograph photos.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's amazing. And one of the reasons I also wanted to ask you here is because you basically live with Star Wars constantly throughout your life.
Yeah.
Like it's basically with you every single day. And for myself though, Star Wars, when I was a kid, like I grew up when the prequels were being released. My experience was mostly playing with the toys, playing Lego Star Wars, playing Star Wars Battlefront. Even now I'm playing it, revisiting it, because now Star Wars has just consumed my life now. But in regards to the original trilogy, I hadn't watched those films since I was a kid, at least like sitting down. And even then, if somebody was to tell me what Star Wars was about, I couldn't tell them. I couldn't say what happens, why it happens, and all that. But yet, like everybody else, because everybody on the internet says it's great, I absolutely have to say it's the greatest film ever made. It's one of the greatest things that's been done. So, yeah, exactly. I felt bad because I was just quoting other people in terms of thoughts and feelings. So I decided, you know what? Let's revisit the entire franchise. Let's see what Star Wars is, what makes it great in terms of the films. And revisiting A New Hope, it was so weird because I didn't know anything about the story. Like I forgot. I was like, so there's these guys in suits, and one of them's like a black samurai outfit and they blow something up, and that was all I remembered. But then watching it, I realized that there's this it's a really simple story, but it's like so filled with this really amazing just not complicated world, but it's like so much richness in terms of characters and individuals and creatures, and the music is amazing, and everything about this film is so like almost perfect to a certain extent in terms of the construction of it, but it's also very simple. And so like I understand when people say like Star Wars is a kids movie, or like it's a family film.
Well, it was a kids movie that got taken out of control. Like it was never meant to be more than a kids movie. And so I think it was a simple idea, but then he birthed just this greatest universe that you could ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was never intended to be more than that. So I think that's why it's simple. Like everybody says, like keep it simple. I think that's why people connect with it so much, is because of the simplicity behind it.
No, that's true. Like the opening shot, for instance, I'm always in awe when I see that shot. I'm always expecting it to be smaller than it really is, but it's so freaking big. And seeing that shot, that gives you every piece of information you need to know. There's a small rebel ship, and they're trying to outrun this giant, big ship that's going to catch them. And like, it sets up a really simple but really interesting story right off the bat.
Well, it's if you really break down the story of A New Hope, it's we meet these characters. Characters took something to help them beat up the bad guys. Characters run away, meet another character who leads them to, the whole rebellion. Okay, we gotta go beat up the bad guys. Go beat up the bad guys. Everybody parties at the end. Super simple. You meet a couple scoundrels on the way. Super simple. but at the same time, just the hidden meaning behind everything in the movie, I think, grabs everybody on such an emotional level, which is why I think it was such a success. Is because
Hmm.
there's so many things that are happening at the same time that I feel like everybody can find something different to latch on to. You talk to any Star Wars fan, everybody loves something different than everybody else for a different reason. And that's also one of my favorite things about Star Wars in general, to talk with different fans, is finding out why certain people like it and why certain people hate it and why certain people who love Star Wars love it enough to hate
There's this really what you said about like everybody can find something to latch on to. It's so impressive. Like with this first film, what I was remembering is that the characters, in terms of even from their performances, like for example, just looking at C3PO and R2D2, complete polar opposites. One of them is a very eloquent, very kind of shiny, able to kind of like humanoid looking creature or like robot, and the other one is a complete just block being rolled around on wheels,
it. The
and
can
yet
on wheels.
just a can on wheels. But you can understand that the two of them are completely opposites based on not just the bloops, but in terms of what the little can does when those bloops are occurring. Like he's able to, George Lucas, I think, really wrote a really well constructed dynamic between these two. And like you said, it, like most of these films, it was inspired by a Japanese film where the comic relief characters were just like kind of traveling through this world. It's just so cool to be able to see, again, a very complicated idea. Like we're bringing in robots into a movie. It could be super overly complicated. They could be talking about empathy. They could be talking about all this stuff, the humanity. We could be going into Blade Runner here, but instead they decide to just make it simple. This one character is kind of like a butler-esque type character. The other one's a little bit like a what's the word? Kind of like a free-spirited guy who's got a mission and he's got to go after that mission.
uh it's, man, it's a good way to describe them though, like, man. But it's crazy how, like, you take just like, the robot butler, then you take a can on wheels, and if you take them away, I feel like you would take away such a heart of Star Wars, which is
Mhm.
crazy to think, because like I personally can't stand C3PO, but
Really?
yet he's in every single movie. Well, it's not that I can't stand him, he's just super annoying. He's always whining, like, come on, like,
Oh
go
yeah,
try
yeah. No,
something.
that's
But I
true.
guess you can't fight your programming.
Well, it's yeah. There's always that game where people talk about, if Luke Skywalker whines, take a drink. And with that game, I think you'll be pretty sloshed. Not in this
Yeah.
film, but in Empire. Every time C3PO takes a drink, like whines, and you take a drink, you will be dead when that happens. So yeah, I completely understand the idea. Like he's a yeah, like the idea of being him being an annoying character, but it's in this movie in particular. I think that it sets up this very being surrounded by a bunch of rebels in the opening who are basically trying to stop the empire and getting killed like right in the way, and then the princess who kind of stands up but gets captured. He seems like a voice of like the everyman individual who's like, oh, we're going to die or we're doomed, or like it just seems he fits that. He's the missing piece to that environment. Like otherwise we'd be seeing this really boring scene of just people fighting and getting
Hmm.
killed, and we wouldn't have this investment. But we see two other people who are leaving that area, and two of them for different reasons. One of them with a purpose, the other one is just like, I just don't want to die. That's kind of like a human element in this, with two very non-human characters.
And it really is. And it's even and even if you actually if you think about it, you actually probably wouldn't even have the story of Star Wars without 3PO. Like, you look at the scene at the when you first meet Luke, when you're on Tatooine, when him and Uncle Phil are choosing these droids from the Jawas, and they originally choose the red one, and it blows up, and little 3PO's like, yo, like, why not little blue? And it's like, if he didn't speak up, like, man, who knows what would
Yeah,
have happened.
and it's cool. Like he says that, and like even though he like mocks R2, there is a kinship. So it's kind of cool to see droids have friends too, and yeah, it's just so they have this real. There's like real heart there, and I think it's really smart in that correct construction. I like how you called him Uncle Phil. That's my favorite thing. I want to call him that forever. Um, the establishment of Luke, that occurs at first, because I forgot, like he's just a normal guy. Like he says he's gonna go meet with his friends. He wants to go for better things. He wants to go to the academy. He
wants to get some power converters, some Tachi Station.
Yeah, and he wants to, but he's being put in a situation not just because, his uncle probably cares about him, but he's doing it because he's kind of concerned. He kind of forcibly wants to hold him back because of something. Like it's like, well, why would he want to do that?
Because, man, if Uncle Phil knew his dad, I get it. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Honestly, man, sorry, you hit a touchy subject. It's always bugged me a little bit. Like when you watch the scene, like you only see like Phil and Baru for so small amount of time. But it's like what you get across is that his uncle obviously wants to protect him. But it drives me crazy how, like, when he's talking about, how he found the message in R2 and he's looking for this guy named Obi-Wan Kenobi, and his uncle's like, oh, no, I saw it, old Ben. Like, no, forget about it. Like, just kind of not touching base on it. But then when he mentions he knew his father, he just like, when Luke tries to find out about his father, he just shuts him down. And like, again, I get it. Your dad's the evil Sith Lord of the universe, and like he's not a good guy. Like I get that, but like, man, a little bit of honesty with them, could have gone a long way. Sorry, it's always bugged me that part a little bit.
No, that's true. And honestly, if I was going to go into the first gripe that I do have with this movie, that's one of those things that I think you could do that scene. You could do the same exact writing, and it can hold some weight, but I think you need to be a really, really darn good actor to pull that off. And one of the biggest things I say is, like, I think that Uncle Ben, or Uncle Phil, as he's now called, Uncle Phil, and
the actor's name's Phil Brown. So
okay, great. No, then I feel then great. So yeah, Uncle Phil and Aunt Beru. This might sound bad. I don't think that they're necessarily great actors in terms of delivering their lines, especially Aunt Beru.
Where are you going?
Looks like I'm going nowhere. I have to go finish cleaning those two boys.
Oh, and he can't stay here forever. Most of his friends have gone. It means so much to him.
I'll make it up to him next year. I promise.
Luke's just not a farmer, Owen. He has too much of his father in him.
That's what I'm afraid of.
It's just a little thing. There's some gripes I have with some of the performances. Like later on in the film, there's that one guy in the Death Star who's talking. They're having like the conference about the rebellion and the power of the Death Star. And the one guy's like,
the rebellion will continue to gain a support in the Imperial Senate.
Yeah, okay. That's a choice. That's a choice. There's even the scene where like the stormtroopers are scouring the sand, and one of them goes, "Look, sir, droids." Holds up a circle. I don't know. It's stuff like that.
This watch shirt's clearly from a droid.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
yeah.
The good old stormtroopers. Oh man. Oh, stormtroopers.
Yeah, but it's definitely, that's one of those definite gripes I have with the film. The performances in this movie are not incredible for the most part. They're either serviceable to most of their characters, give them a great base, and then they expand later, or they're being compared to Alec Guinness and the voice of James Earl Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And and even Peter Cushing, and I think that's really, it's a tough bar to go to when you got like relatively new performers going up against some of the greatest actors that ever lived. There's something I forgot to mention with R2 and C-3PO in terms of their characters. I never realized just how much of a rapscallion that R2 is in this movie. Like
he's a little shit.
Yeah, once he gets to Luke's home, he gets the restraining bolt. And it's really well established that Jawa stops him from moving. And R2 has the message from Princess Leia, and he plays only some of the message. Like, it's like, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." And it's like playing on repeat. And Luke is really interested in what's going on here. He's like, "This is really cool." And then R2's like, in bleeps, it might be able to work if you take off this restraining bolt for me.
And it's insane how much of a character and how much language R2 is able to get across with beeps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's such a strong character, and he doesn't even talk.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's also like trusting the other actors, like C-3PO, the actor who's playing him, trusting that he is delivering what R2 intends clearly.